The planet's atmosphere corroded our drones in minutes. Acid rain fell like molten needles, and the surface trembled with tectonic fury. We called it Hell's Cradle, but Commander Reef Regan grinned at the chaos and said, "Home sweet home." We hit the atmosphere like a bullet through a steel plate. The drop pod screamed as the hull strained under the pressure of Erebus 9's toxic skies. I strapped in the cockpit, fingers wrapped tightly around the armrest as turbulence slammed me from side to side. Elias Bolt Carlson's voice crackled in my ear. "You sure this is worth dying for, boss?" he said. He was trying to keep his tone tight, but I could still hear the nervous edge. "We haven't died yet," I replied, though the pod rattled like it might prove me wrong. "Hold steady. This isn't the worst landing I've seen." Bolt grumbled. "I feel better already." "Quiet down!" A sharper voice cut in. Dr. Victor Harlow, the scientist. "If we burn up before touchdown, I'd rather my last moments be in peace." I ignored them both and focused on the readout ahead of me. We were close now. Erebus 9, the so-called Deathworld, waited below. It wasn't the first planet humanity had tried to terraform, but it was the most hostile by far. The kind of place that chewed through lesser species and spat out their bones. To the aliens, Erebus 9 was a lost cause. But to us, it was an invitation. The pods broke cloud cover, and for the first time, I saw the surface. Blackened ground stretched endlessly below us, cracked and broken like dried blood. Geysers of steaming acid burst from fissures in the earth. Lightning split the sky, followed by peals of thunder that rattled our descent. Bolt let out a whistle. "Nice neighborhood. Wonder why no one's moved in yet." "Keep it together," I said. "We've got 30 seconds to touchdown. Once we're on the ground, priority 1 is establishing the base perimeter. Harlow, prep your analysis drones. Bolt, get ready to build." "Aye, Commander," Bolt said. The pod slammed into the surface with bone-jarring force. I felt my teeth rattle in my skull as the retros fired, slowing us just enough to avoid turning into paste. My harness released with a hiss. I grabbed my helmet and shoved it on as the pod's doors groaned open. Hell greeted us. The air shimmered with heat and toxins. Acid rain drummed against the hull, eating tiny pockmarks into the metal. The suit's HUD blinked to life, flashing atmosphere, unbreathable, hazardous conditions detected. "Move!" I barked, stepping onto the planet's surface. My boots sank into the slick black soil, what little of it that hadn't turned into molten sludge. Bolt and Harlow followed close behind. "We've got about 5 minutes before the rain eats through our suits," Harlow shouted over the wind. "I'll deploy the drones now." "Good," I said. I scanned the horizon, searching for anything that looks like a threat. Lightning crackled in the distance. The sky churned like a boiling cauldron, and the ground trembled underfoot. A series of hills loomed several kilometers to the north, the highest point we'd seen. "That ridge," I said, pointing. "We'll set up base there. Bolt, mark the route and get the crawler moving." "You got it." Bolt slammed the side of the supply crawler, a massive 8-wheel vehicle crammed with everything we needed to survive. Portable hab units, the terraforming drones, and a few hastily assembled defenses. The engine rumbled to life, spitting black smoke into the toxic air. We made it to the ridge just as the first storm hit. The rain came down like molten glass, a torrent so intense it turned the ground into steaming pits of mud. Bolt and I worked in tandem, unloading the hab units and sealing them to the ridge's stone foundation. Harlow sent out drones to analyze the atmosphere and soil composition, mumbling excitedly about carbon to acid ratios and sulfuric compounds. I barely listened. My attention was on the perimeter. I didn't like how the ground shifted, like something was alive beneath it. Bolt must have noticed my expression. "Expecting company, Commander?" "We're on a death world," I said. "Company's a guarantee." The hab units hissed as their precious seals engaged. Bolt grinned, sweat dripping down his face. "First home in Erebus 9 is up and running. Not pretty, but it'll do." I nodded, but my gut twisted as the tremors underfoot grew stronger. Something's coming. It was nightfall that brought the predators. We were in the hab unit when the first drone feed cut out. Static hissed in my earpiece. Then another drone went dark. I tapped the console. "Harlow, status on those drones." Harlow looked up, frowning. "The feeds are offline." "Wait." He tapped a few keys, and the main screen flickered. For a brief moment, a creature filled the frame. An armored beast with a segmented body, claws like scythes, and eyes that gleamed red in the darkness. "Contact," I said grimly. I grabbed my rifle and motioned to Bolt. "We're going outside. Harlow, stay here and monitor the perimeter." Bolt put on his helmet and followed me out into the night. The wind howled, carrying the sharp scent of acid and burnt ozone. My visor compensated for the darkness, but even with the HUD enhancements, the landscape was a blur of shadows. Then I saw them. The creatures moved like a liquid, their black carapaces blending with the cracked ground. 6-legged, each the size of a small car, they slithered over the earth with terrifying speeds. There were a dozen of them, encircling our position. "Back to back," I ordered. "We don't let them through." Bolt pressed against me, rifle raised. "Great plan. Any chance they're friendly?" One of the creatures lunged, jaw wide. I fired. The rifle's report cracked through the night, and the bullet struck home. The creature screeched, its armor splintering as it collapsed. Another beast came from the side. Bolt dropped it with a short burst. "We can't hold them forever!" Bolt shouted. "We don't have to," I said. I activated my comm. "Harlow, is the stabilization drone ready?" "It's not fully calibrated." "Do it now!" I roared. Seconds later, a low hum reverberated across the ridge. The stabilization drone burst to life, hovering above the hab unit and emitting a pulse of bright blue energy. The air crackled. For the first time since landing, the acidic rain began to fade. The creatures hesitated, their red eyes flickering. One by one, they hissed and slithered back into the darkness, vanishing into the broken earth. Bolt let out a shaky laugh. They're running! You scared them off, boss! I lowered my rifle, but didn't relax. No, they're just cautious. They're smart. They'll be back. We just bought ourselves some time. At dawn, the air was still. Harlow ran diagnostics on the stabilization drone while Bolt repaired the crawler, muttering curses as he replaced acid-corroded parts. I climbed the ridge and looked out over the valley below. The sky was clearer now. Patches of blue broke through the swirling clouds. The ground looked different too. Less blackened, less hostile. For the first time, it felt like we made a mark on this world. Harlow joined me, his eyes bloodshot from a sleepless night. "It's working," he said quietly. "The stabilization drone. It's neutralizing the sulfuric compounds in the atmosphere. It's dropping as the salts in the rain that dried the ground. The rain should be less acidic within days. We'll start detoxing the soil once it's all cleared out of the air. We're good." I give him a look. "You know this is just the beginning, right? The predators, the storms. This planet won't surrender easily." Then I met his gaze, but neither will we. He smiled faintly, then turned back to his console. "One step at a time, Commander." I looked out at Erebus 9, the Deathworld that no other species dared touch. It would fight us, test us, try to break us. But we were human. When the galaxy turned its back on a challenge, we embraced it. One step at a time. As the sun rose, the first stabilization drone hummed steadily. Bolt's voice crackled through my comm. "Commander, what's next?" I looked at the horizon. The skies churned, the ground trembled, and the wind howled. "We build," I said. And so we did. I was standing on the ridge, staring out over the valley we'd fought so hard to stabilize. The sky had cleared in patches. Sunlight broke through like hesitant fingers. And for a brief moment, I thought Erebus 9 might actually surrender after all. Then the ground rumbled, a deep, bone-shaking vibration that sent fissures across the blackened soil. The first quake hit at dawn. The valley buckled like a wounded beast. Just had to jinx it with that last thought. "Reef!" Bolt's voice crackled in my comm, sharp and panicked. "We've got movement! Big movement! On it!" I shouted back. I turned and sprinted down the hab units, boots skidding over loose stones as tremors grew stronger. Behind me, geysers of steam and molten rock erupted from the cracked ground, spewing heat that turned the air into a shimmering wall. Harlow was already outside, dragging equipment into the crawler. "What's happening?" I demanded. "A quake, obviously!" Harlow snapped, sweat streaking his face. "Magnitude 7 at least. It's no coincidence. The planet's crust is destabilizing, Reef. Worse than we thought." The ground heaved again, knocking me off balance. I hit the dirt hard, the heat scorching through my suit. Bolt shouted something over the comm, but it was drowned out by the roar of splitting earth. I pushed to my feet as a massive crack tore through the ridge, splitting the valley floor wide open. For a moment, I just stared. A yawning chasm stretched hundreds of miles into the earth, glowing red with the molten fury below. "They said minor tremors," I growled, slamming my hand on the table inside the hab unit. The small room shook around us, dust raining down from the ceiling. Harlow didn't flinch. He sat hunched over his datapad, face pale and lips tight. "The planet's core is more active than we realized. We landed right on top of a newly developed molten plume, and the salts we dropped into the soil weakened the crust too much. It's gonna explode!" "Explode?" Bolt finished from across the room. He sat with his elbows on his knees, helmet discarded beside him. His face was streaked with grime and exhaustion. "You're saying Erebus 9's about to blow itself apart?" "Not exactly," Harlow muttered. "But the seismic instability will get worse. We started a chain eruption. Every quake weakens the crust. We'll lose everything we've built here." "So what's the plan?" I said. I kept my voice steady, though inside I felt the weight of the situation pressing down like a fist. Harlow and Bolt looked at me, the leader, the one who never had the luxury of doubt. Harlow straightened and pointed to a hollow map of the valley. "We need to construct seismic stabilizers deep underground. If we can sap the heat from the plume and vent it in mass, we can stabilize the region. I've already calculated the coordinates. There's just one problem." "Let me guess," Bolt said dryly. "It's a death trap." "The fissures run right over the lava caverns," Harlow admitted. "Temperatures will be extreme and the terrain is unstable. One wrong move and we become barbecue." Bolt finished, shaking his head. "Fantastic." I looked at the map, then back at them. "So we dig." Harlow blinked. "You're serious?" "Did you think we'd quit?" I said. I jabbed a finger at the map. "We didn't come here to let Erebus 9 bury us. Bolt, you start prepping the drilling rigs. Harlow, get me everything you need to run the stabilizers. I want those machines ready by tomorrow morning." Bolt let out a long breath and stood. "Guess I'll get my shovel." Harlow hesitated, glancing back at the trembling walls. "Reef, we're running out of time. If we screw this up..." "Don't screw it up," I said. The next 2 days were hell. We moved the crawler into position at the fissure's edge, where the crust was weakest. Bolt set up the first drilling rig, a towering machine built to bore into rock and magma. Its massive drill bit spun to life with a mechanical roar, shaking the ground as it chewed through the earth. "Rigs are online!" Bolt shouted, his voice barely audible over the sound. "We'll need 3 stabilizers down there to vent enough energy. I'm gonna run this one as far as it'll go." "Careful," I warned. "One crack too many and the whole place will collapse." He gave me a grin through his visor. "Don't trust me?" I didn't answer. By the end of the second day, tempers were frayed. The quakes had grown worse, and the air itself seemed to hum with tension. Inside the crawler, Harlow and Bolt nearly came to blows. "You're pushing the rigs too hard!" Harlow snapped, his voice shaking with anger. "One more quake and we'll lose everything!" Bolt stood, face red. "And if we don't push them, we'll lose this whole damn valley! I'm doing what needs to be done, so back off!" "Enough!" I barked. Both of them froze, glaring at each other. I stepped between them. "This planet's trying to kill us, and you two are helping it. We don't have time for this. Harlow, trust Bolt to do his job. Bolt, don't give him a reason to doubt you." Bolt muttered something under his breath, but sat back down. Harlow looked away, jaw clenched. I exhaled, feeling the strain in my bones. They were tired. We all were. but giving up wasn't an option. "We finish what we started," I said quietly. "All of us." The final stabilizer had to be placed by hand. The rigs can only go so far before the terrain would become too unstable. That left the last leg of the job to Bolt and me. We suited up at dawn, the sky an eerie red as smoke and ash clouded the horizon. "You don't have to come with me, Commander," Bolt said as he checked his gear. "You think I'm letting you go down there alone?" I replied. He grinned. "Figured you'd say that." We descended into the fissure, rappelling down the jagged walls. The heat was oppressive, seeping through my suit in waves. Below us, the lava caverns glow like a forge, rivers of molten rock flowing beneath thin, brittle crust. "How's it looking?" I asked. Bolt glanced at his scanner. "About as bad as you expect. Cavern floor's unstable. If the stabilizers don't vent quick enough, then we're fried." "Yep." We hit the cavern floor and unlatched the seismic stabilizers. It was a compact machine, but heavy as hell. Together, we dragged it across the trembling rock toward the designated vent point. The ground shook violently. Chunks of molten debris fell from the cavern ceiling, crashing into the lava below. "Reef, we're out of time!" Bolt shouted. "Keep moving!" I yelled back. We reached the vent point and set the stabilizer down, Bolt frantically keying in the activation sequence. The machine hummed to life, its metal frame glowing as it began to vent geothermal energy throughout the reinforced channels. The tremors grew stronger. I heard a deep crack as the cavern floor split wide open. Lava spurged upwards and the stabilizer's footing began to slide. Bolt lunged for it, grabbing the machine to hold it steady. "Bolt, let go!" I shouted. "It's slipping!" he yelled back. Without thinking, I grabbed his harness and yanked him back. The stabilizer tilted, but its anchors caught just in time. A deafening pulse shook the cavern as the machine began to vent. Streams of initially white-hot gas shot upward, chemically cooling the superheated air as the tremors finally began to subside. "We did it!" Bolt breathed. "Reef, The cavern floor buckled. I pushed Bolt towards the rope. "Go! What about you?" "I'll be right behind you!" I lied. The last thing I saw was Bolt's face, wide with shock. Before the rope jerked upward, the ground collapsed beneath me, and I fell. I woke up in the hab unit, every muscle screaming in protest. The first thing I saw was the ceiling, cracked but intact. Bolt was sitting nearby, his head in his hands. He looked and grinned when he saw me. "You're awake. Took you long enough." "How bad is it?" I croaked. Harlow's voice came from the doorway. "The region's stable. The stabilizers worked. The quakes have stopped." I let out a slow breath. "Then we keep building." Bolt snorted. "Of course you'd say that." I looked out the window. The land beyond was still scarred, but quiet. The air shimmered, and for the first time, I saw green, tiny shoots of life pushing through the blackened soil. "The planet stopped trying to kill us, for now," Harlow said softly. I smiled faintly. "Then we keep building." We planted the first seed and watched it burn to ash. The planet wasn't done with us yet. Life doesn't take root easily in hell, but we're stubborn like that. The valley was quieter now. The seismic stabilizers held, and the earth no longer shook beneath our feet. I stood at the edge of the hab unit, watching the sky, clearer than it had ever been. As sunlight filtered down onto Erebus 9, the ground, still scorched and cracked, steamed gently as the rain lightened. It was progress, but progress didn't mean we could rest. "Reef!" Bolt's voice crackled in my earpiece. "The first field's ready. Harlow says we're planting today." "On my way," I replied, heading towards the crawler. My ribs still ached from the last mission, but the pain reminded me we were alive, and that was enough. Erebus 9 hadn't killed us yet. At the field site, Bod stood beside Dr. Harlow, who was crouched over a set of bioengineered seedlings. The plants didn't look like much, thin green stems encased in protective nutrient pods, but they were humanity's best hope for creating life here. "This is it," Bolt said, scratching the back of his neck. "We're betting on twigs?" Harlow shot him a withering look. "They're not twigs. These are genetically modified chlorophyta hybrids, capable of filtering toxins and pulling less lethal gases from Erebus 9's atmosphere and replacing them with less lethal ones. Assuming, of course, that the soil doesn't kill them first. Optimistic as always, Doc, Bolt muttered. I crouched next to Harlow, examining the seedlings. What's the survival chance? Harlow hesitated. 5%. And if it works? Then we jumpstart an entire ecosystem, he said, his voice tinged with cautious hope. One crop at a time. Then we're planting, I said firmly. Let's get to it. The first seed hit the soil with a soft thunk. We stood in silence, watching as Harlow activated the nutrient pod. A thin mist hissed out, surrounding the seedling in a protective bubble. For a moment, it sat there, a fragile sliver of green against the blackened earth. Then the bubble flickered, and burst. Bolt exhaled loudly. Well, that's not ideal. Harlow's face was blank, but his hands trembled as he reached for another seedling. It was a miscalculation. The acidity levels are too high. I'll recalibrate the next one. How many do we have? I asked. 42, Harlow replied. Then we try again. Every single one, I said, standing straight. This planet doesn't want to make it easy? That's fine. We're not here because it's easy. Bolt grunted. That's your way of saying we're gonna plant all day, huh? You got it. By sundown, we'd planted 28 seedlings. None survived. Harlow sat beside his equipment, staring at the lifeless ground. Bolt threw a piece of broken machinery across the field, cursing under his breath. The day had been grueling, and the repeated failures weighed on us all. It's not going to work, Harlow said quietly. His voice was strained, raw. The soil's too toxic. The radiation levels are off the charts. We're asking these plants to survive in conditions no life forms ever faced. I sank onto a rock, every muscle in my body aching. You're saying we give up? Harlow didn't answer. Bolt sat down beside me, wiping sweat from his brow. Reef, maybe he's right. This planet doesn't want life. Maybe it's not meant for it. I looked at the two of them. The weight of failure was heavy. But failure wasn't an option. I closed my eyes, thinking of Earth's cities, the crowned halls of Mars, the endless darkness beyond. Humanity needed Erebus 9, no matter how much the planet hated us. No, I said finally. We're not done yet. We've burned through half the seedlings! Harlow snapped. What do you expect us to do? Find another way, I said. Harlow laughed bitterly. Another way? This isn't magic, Reef. The words died on his lips as the ground beneath us trembled faintly. Not again, Bolt muttered, reaching for his gear. But this wasn't a quake. The tremor was different, a subtle, rhythmic hum, like the beating of a massive heart. I glanced at Harlow, who was already staring at his scanner. It's coming from below, he said, eyes wide. There's something alive down there. Those giant bugs from earlier, maybe? The caves beneath the valley were older than the surface itself, carved by millennia of lava flows and pressure then abandoned. Harlow led the way, his scanner guiding us deeper into the darkness. Bolt and I followed close behind, weapons ready. This is a bad idea, Bolt muttered. We're walking straight into the belly of the beast. You can stay topside if you want, I said, though I knew he wouldn't. Not a chance! Someone's gonna pull your reckless ass out when things go sideways. The deeper we went, the stronger the rhythmic tremors became. The air grew thick and humid, laced with a faint, organic smell, like something alive. Finally, the tunnel widened into a massive cavern, and we stopped cold. The walls glowed faintly with bioluminescent fungi, their tendrils spreading across the rock like veins of a pale fire. Massive mushroom-like structures towered over the cavern floor, pulsing gently with inner light, and in the center, rising like a monolith, was a sprawling fungal mass, its surface shifting as though it were breathing. What the hell is that? Bolt whispered. Harlow stared in awe. An ecosystem. A hidden ecosystem. The fungal mass stirred. A tendril shot out of the ground, whipping towards us like a striking snake. I shoved Harlow out of the way as it slammed into the rock wall behind us, sending debris raining down. "They're hostile!" Bolt shouted, raising his rifle. "No!" Harlow barked. "They're defensive! We're intruders in their territory! Don't shoot!" The fungal mass shifted again, and a cloud of spores erupted into the air. My visor flashed warnings as the atmosphere filled with organic particles. "We need to go!" I said, pulling Harlow to his feet. Bolt fired a shot into the air, and the tendrils retracted, hissing. The path back to the surface was narrow, but we sprinted for it, the rhythmic thrumming growing louder as the cave roared to life around us. Back on the surface, we regrouped in the crawler. Harlow paced the room, his eyes alight with excitement. "Do you understand what this means?" he said, half to himself. "The fungi. It's adapted. It survives down there. It's hostile because it sees us as a threat. But what if we can integrate it? Use it?" Bolt looked incredulous. "You want us to make friends with the mushrooms that just tried to kill us?" "They didn't try to kill us," Harlow shot back. "They were protecting themselves. We're strange creatures here. It doesn't know that we aren't like those giant bugs. In fact, it's no wonder those things attacked us when we landed. They probably fed on those mushrooms, and we landed just a few clicks shy of their food. If we can extract samples and adapt them into our terraforming tech, it might be exactly what we need to stabilize the soil." I leaned against the table, considering. It was a risk, a huge one. But Harlow was right. The fungi survived where nothing else could. If we could harness that. "Do it," I said. "But carefully. We're not looking for another fight." Harlow nodded, already assembling his tools. Bolt groaned. "Great. More mushrooms." Over the next week, Harlow worked non-stop, splicing fungal samples with his bioengineered plants, Bolt reinforcing the hab units to keep the spores out, muttering complaints the whole time. I spent most of my days overseeing the work and keeping watch. Finally, Harlow called us to the field. "This is it," he said, holding up a modified seedling. The green stem pulsed faintly, its roots wrapped in pale fungal tendrils. "This fungi provides protection and nutrients. The plants stabilize the soil. It's symbiosis." We planted the seedling together. This time, when the nutrient pod activated, the mist settled gently over the plant. The green stem didn't wither, it grew. Slowly, but impossibly fast. It grew before our very eyes. Days later, I stood on the ridge overlooking the valley. Patches of green dotted the blackened earth, interwoven with glowing fungal structures. The air was clearer, the ground quieter. Life had taken root in hell. Bolt stood beside me, shaking his head. "Didn't think I'd live to see the day." Harlow joined us, smiling faintly. The fungi. They didn't just adapt. They wanted to survive, and we gave them something better than anything they had in that cave. I looked out over the transformed valley. "We didn't conquer this planet," I said quietly. "We made it our partner." The green tide was spreading, and for the first time, Erebus 9 felt like home. We turned Erebus 9 into something almost beautiful. So, of course, the rest of the galaxy showed up to take it from us. Years had passed since we planted the first seed. Back then, it seemed impossible that anything could thrive on Erebus 9's scarred surface. Now, forests stretched across the valleys, rivers carved their way through stone, and the once toxic skies shone a pale, tranquil blue. I stood on the ridge above our colony, breathing air that no longer burned my lungs. Erebus 9 was alive, but peace never lasts. "Incoming transmission." Harlow's voice crackled in my comm. His tone was tight, uneasy. "It's not from Earth." I turned, brow furrowing. The aliens had ignored this planet for centuries, leaving it to rot as an unclaimed death trap. But success has a way of attracting attention. "Patch it through," I said. Harlow appeared on the ridge a moment later, holding a datapad. Bolt followed close behind, wiping grease from his hands as the three of us huddled together. A hologram flickered to life above the pad. A tall, insectoid alien with glistening carapace armor. Its mandibles clicked a slow, deliberate rhythm as its words were translated into English.
Humans, you trespass on Erebor. This territory was once part of the Eradan Consortium. This planet belongs to us. Surrender your claim or be removed.
The message ended abruptly.
Charming,
Bolt said, crossing his arms.
They didn't want this place when it was trying to kill everything that breathed. Now they want to roll in and take the credit.
Typical, Harlow muttered. They've seen what we built here. Forests, water, breathable air. It's a miracle by any standard. To them, we've made Erebus 9 valuable. I clenched my jaw, staring at the distant horizon. The forest swayed gently in the breeze, oblivious to what loomed above. They're testing us, I said finally. If we don't answer, they'll think we're weak. Harlow signed. And if we do answer?
They'll come anyway, Bolt replied. Aliens like that only respect one thing.
Force, I finished. I turned to Bolt. Prepare the colony's defenses. Get every turret, shield, and drone operational. Harlow, I need you to start working on contingencies. If it comes to a fight, I want to know how we can use the planet itself. The planet? Harlow looked skeptical. This place fought us every step of the way, I said. Let's give our visitors a taste of the plate they pushed away. The alien fleet arrived 3 days later. They descended from orbit like a swarm of locusts, sleek black ships blotting out the afternoon sun. I watched from the command center as the first vessel broke through the atmosphere, kicking up the clouds of dust as it hovered over the valley. Transmission incoming, Harlow announced. The same alien, their leader, I assume, appeared on the screen. Its mandibles clicked as it spoke, but this time its tone carried a sharper edge.
You have ignored our warnings. Surrender this planet immediately or face annihilation.
I stepped forward, glaring at the hologram. You abandoned this world. We bled to make it what it is now. If you want Erebus 9, come and take it. The alien tilted its head, mandibles twitching. Then the hologram cut out.
Well,
Bolt said grimly.
That did it. Shields are up, weapons primed.
Here they come, Harlow murmured. The first attack was surgical. Alien dropships descended into the outskirts of the colony, deploying squads of insectoid warriors armed with plasma rifles and energy shields. Our automated turrets roared to life, spitting streams of gunfire that cut down the first wave. But more were coming. Bolt cursed over the comm.
They're flanking the assault perimeter! I've got drones en route, but we're stretched thin, Commander!
Hold the line, I ordered, strapping my rifle and sprinting out of the command center. Outside, the colony buzzed with activity as settlers scrambled to reinforce barricades and man defensive positions. Explosions boomed in the distance, flashes of plasma lighting up the tree line. I found Bolt crouched behind a makeshift wall of metal crates, directing fire as drones zipped through the air, unleashing rockets at advanced alien forces. How bad is it? I shouted over the chaos. Bolt fired a shot, dropping an alien soldier mid-charge.
We're holding down, but they're testing us. They want to see how tough we are before they bring the hammer down.
Then we'll show them, I growled. For 2 days, the aliens pushed us. The soldiers came in waves, relentless and disciplined. We held the line, but it cost us. 12 drones were lost. Turrets melted under plasma fire. Several settlers we'd just brought in a year ago were injured. By the 3rd day, Harlow called me to the lab. I think I have a solution, he said, eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights. It's risky, but it might turn the tide. Go on, I said. He brought up a hologram of Erebus' 9 atmosphere. The disruptor system we designed during the earlier days, when the air was still toxic, can be reactivated. If we overload it, we can create localized storms, acidic rain, sulfuric winds. Everything that used to make this planet unlivable. Bolt, who'd followed me in, frowned.
You want to undo all our work?
If they want Erebus 9, let them see what it used to be like, Harlow said. I considered the plan, my stomach twisting. I remember those earlier days, the storms that stripped metal to bare bones, the air that melted anything unprotected. Using the disruptor would put the entire colony at risk. We don't have a choice, I said, finally. Do it. The alien fleet made its move at dawn. A massive warship descended over the colony, casting its shadow across the field we'd fought so hard to grow. From its hull, a beam of blue light erupted, obliterating an empty storage unit in a thunderous blast.
They're going for the command center!
Bolt shouted over the comm. I sprinted to the ridge, rifle in hand. Harlow's voice rang out through my earpiece. Disruptor is primed. I'm activating it now. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the sky turned black. Thunder rolled as clouds formed out of nothing, swirling in unnatural patterns. The air grew heavy, thick with moisture that burned my lungs. Then the rain came. Acidic torrents that slammed into the alien warships, corroding its hull. Soldiers on the ground screamed as the rain ate through their unhardened armor, sending them scrambling for cover. Plasma fire sputtered out and died as electronic storms crackled the volley, frying alien equipment. I stood at the ridge, watching as Erebus 9 reclaimed itself. Thankfully, hadn't yet replaced most of the colonial equipment, so all of our stuff was still chemically hardened. It's working, Harlow said, his voice awed. They're pulling back. Bolt whooped in victory.
You see that? They're running! Go on, get out of here!
But the aliens didn't leave quietly. Their warship unleashed one final barrage, targeting the disruptor system. The explosion shook the valley, sending me sprawling to the ground. Status! I shouted. Harlow's voice was faint. The disruptor's offline, but it doesn't matter. They're retreating. I pulled myself to my feet, ignoring the ache in my ribs. The warship was rising, its engines glowing as it ascended into the sky. Smaller dropships followed, disappearing into the clouds. We'd won. Hours later, the storms cleared. The sky returned to blue, and the valley, scarred but alive, was quiet again. Bolt, Harlow, and I stood together on the ridge, overlooking the colony. The forests were battered but intact. Enough trees and mutant species of the original fungus survived to re-establish the safer atmosphere and keep the soil from relapsing. Rivers still flowed, glistening in the sunlight, their water capable of enduring the temporary rise in temperature. The fields, our fields, remained green. Harlow exhaled, a tired smile tugging at his lips. They're gone.
For now, Bolt muttered, but his tone was lighter. But if they come back, they'll think twice.
I looked out over the land we'd fought for, my chest swelling with something I haven't felt in a long time. Pride. This world is ours, I said softly. Not because we took it, but because we bled for it. We made it. If they want it, they'll have to do the same. Harlow nodded. Bolt grinned. We stood there in silence for a moment. 3 humans on a planet that no one else wanted. The skies were clear, the forest swayed, and Erebus 9, once a Deathworld, was ours. We took Hell's Cradle and turned it into a home, I said, smiling faintly. Humanity 1, Deathworld 0.